Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turpeyville. C.O. Smith, Texas A&M Class of 1950, is proud of the role that the United States Coast Guard played in World War II on board the Coast Guard Cutter Bramble. C.O. Smith spent the most part of 4 years at sea, almost making it to Europe before mechanical problems sent them to Puerto Rico to dry dock, and then through the Panama Canal to the Pacific and Alaska, where his crew supplied Navy Seabees who were building the Loran Stations. You'll learn more about those as you meet C.O. Smith of Bryant today on Veterans of the Valley. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for your service, Mr. Smith. You graduated from Wichita Falls High School in 1942, went to Midwestern for a year, and then to the Coast Guard in 1943. Talk about your path to the Coast Guard and what sent you there.
Well, at that time, when you went through, everyone was going through the draft board, and so they divided us up, wherever they wanted us. So myself and 2 or 3 from our area sent us to Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Went to what they call Treasure Island in Oakland, San Francisco Bay area.
Right.
Boot camp, and had a beginning there, but out of that, I don't know why I was selected to go to the Coast Guard Academy. I think it was because I was familiar with equipment, machines. I'd rebuilt a car myself, Model T Ford, out of parts, and I guess that came out that I knew something about tools. So I became a diesel engine and diesel electric engine expert in about 3 months.
Well, you were a prime candidate, and you graduated the top of your class, but you were too young to be an officer because you weren't 21 yet. You were what, only 18 years old, right?
Just about 18 and a half, 19.
Right. So you're apprentice seaman, which is
the lowest you can go when you first go in.
Right.
To a motor machinist first class, which is
equivalent of a master sergeant in the Army?
Yeah.
Is that right?
So I got that promotion, and didn't realize that I was in charge when it came to being aboard ship and have these big old diesel engines to go that about 40 to 50 feet long.
Right. So it wasn't long before you were going to go off to war, and the deployment was going to be to Europe, from the East Coast to Europe, but something happened along the way. So talk about that.
Well, we caught the Bramble, was put aboard it. It was made in Duluth, Minnesota, and came down through the Great Lakes, down through the St. Lawrence, and then we actually boarded it in New York and went down then and outfitted at Fort Eustis, Virginia area. And we didn't know it, but when we first took out, we found out we were at sea, and there were hundreds of ships half a mile or a mile apart as far as you could see. And we were doing submarine duty on the invasion fleet going to Europe. And that went real well until we got about the middle of the Atlantic and we hit a hurricane that they didn't know about, or timing was where everybody went. Our sister ship became disabled, lost its propulsion, and so whoever's in charge had us to take it under tow. And then we went out because there was a defect in the bearings of the propulsion.
Right.
And
so you were towing it, and then the Bramble went out.
And of course we were in that storm, and I didn't realize it that the captain thought we were going to both get sunk because we'd get together in that storm and just destroy each other. But luckily it was I got up on deck, since I was the deck below, and I could see we were about 10 feet apart, but never did touch. But we had to stay there for 10 days till they could get somebody to us. In fact, the storm went on for about another 6 days till the hurricane all passed.
Right.
It was really a joyride there.
You were alone, just at the whim of the storm.
They went on, of course. First thing I thought, well, we're really good submarine bait, but we were small and insignificant compared to the forces that were going on to Europe.
Right.
But our ship, they towed it. They found out there wasn't dry dock facilities for it, which was necessary to get all this taken care of, and they sent us to Puerto Rico.
They towed you. This Navy tug towed you to Puerto Rico.
Large Navy tug towed us all the way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a long trip.
It was a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Getting us there.
Right.
And then we were there about 6 weeks.
Waiting for your boat to get fixed.
Finished. When that was done, then we took off for the Panama Canal, and I didn't know where since my job was in the engine room, but
Right.
took off for Pacific then.
Right. Of course, later you would become, we'll talk about this, later your career would be in landscape architecture. So when you were in Puerto Rico, that was kind of a nice place
yeah,
to be
it was great.
for your
Yeah.
interest, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed it fine. Had a lot of great experiences to seeing all these plants that I'd been reading about, even at that time.
Right.
That we didn't grow in Texas, so
Right.
I enjoyed it
Right.
there. And the only problem is we hadn't gotten paid in about 3 months, and it was about 3 months later before we ever got paid. So we had to do things we didn't spend money on.
I see.
And we enjoyed that.
So you 10 days at sea, then towed to Puerto Rico, about another 6 weeks there, and then your deployment completely changed. You weren't going to Europe anymore.
Right. Yeah, whatever it was, we were sent through the Panama Canal, and had to wait a few days after we got to the entrance before our time came to go through.
Right.
And after we got through, then we took off and ended up eventually in San Francisco before we were sent on out to Hawaii the first time. Interesting thing coming up from the Panama Canal one evening, a Mexican fisherman had a whole load of fish, I guess, but he was up on deck laving a piston, and my captain thought he was disabled, so we took him in tow and towed him all night long. The next morning, we were just entering the San Diego Bay. The guy came up waving, his engine was running. Found out that was a con deal that those fishermen did. He got a free ride all night and sleep. But he pulled up and gave us 3 great big tuna fish for
letting him con you, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that wasn't a bad trade-off.
No,
I
for
guess.
us it wasn't fun.
You said at one time you thought that you'd encountered an enemy sub, but it turned out not to be that.
No, we made one run. The ensigns are like a lieutenant second class, and they make a lot of mistakes. And he thought we had a sub, and we really made a raid on it, shot our depth charges and hedgehogs and all that stuff. Finally looked back and we saw we'd sunk a half-submerged barrel.
But you blew the heck out of it,
We
right?
got the experience anyway.
That's right. You got some good target practice on that.
Yeah.
One thing, and you may have mentioned this before, you did to me, was that through all of this was a good deployment for you because you didn't get seasick.
Never did.
Even in the 10 days at sea,
No.
going because and that was going to serve you well later on because you'd get some pretty rough waters later on.
For some reason, I don't know why.
Right.
We were in a lot of bad water later on.
Yeah. Well, you're spending nearly 4 years in the water, so
Yeah.
that's good for you. Talk about your assignment to Alaska and sort of what it involved. Obviously, people know that it was the Navy Seabees' job to build stuff for the war, whether they be runways or whatever they were for World War II. And one of the things that they built were these Loran Stations. Talk about what is a Loran Station and what your all's duty was as far as supplying these.
Well, that was the first radio directional station. Yeah, any kind of thing. It's like a microwave. It was an early microwave thing that were built, and those were going to be used for us for Doolittle and all those that when they bombed Japan. And we had a whole series of those on out in Alaska, out in the middle of the Gulf, and then on up out on all the islands.
Down the Aleutians and all that.
And then we built one up between the Russia and United States on the Pribilof Islands. And so we were supplying them because they were alone.
Right.
These guys that were doing that work, and they worked through the winter. I never did ever see what the temperature was, but I know the seawater was freezing, and we were told if we hit the water, we'd maybe last a minute.
Right.
Because it's that cold.
Right.
So, but I never thought we had a job to do. I never thought about that.
You were talking about one crew of Seabees that you encountered that you had something that they really wanted.
It was amazing. We came in, we had we were also an icebreaker. We could go through about 3 foot of ice. In fact, they're still using those old ships today to keep the oil fields, go up the oil fields north of Alaska now.
Right.
The Navy has a large nuclear one that does the heavy work, and then those others just keep going back, keeping it cleared so they can get in. But we had to supply this island, Pribilof Islands, that's halfway between Russia and the United States, way up north. I don't know how cold it was, but we had to break ice to get in there, and I took the barge in loaded with supplies, and on top of it were some crates of oranges. And the poor guys had been working there all winter. I don't know whether they were out of supplies, but they sure hadn't had anything for citrus or anything like that. They saw those oranges, they reached down, jumped aboard, and just those wooden crates of orange, they just tore them apart and started eating oranges, peeling, seeds and all, because they hadn't had anything.
Right.
And they were almost to the point of scurvy.
Right.
And that was
so the vitamin C involved was something that they wanted. So
that, and it was quite an experience there to see nature at work with all the seals and sea lions. You just walk out among them.
Right.
You were told by the Eskimos and also by the guys that were working on them not to bother them. We found out they ate them all the time, but they would grab one of them's ear and go behind kind of a dune there and club it to kill it. They never let any of the population see them kill another animal.
Right.
So they were all friendly, just like puppy dogs almost, those great old big things.
Some of the waters that you encountered, just to say that it was rough would be a vast understatement. I mean, the way you describe it, you're talking about 90-foot swales and things like this.
To see pictures of the crab industry going on there, they lose ships every year. But we were going over one wave and down through another one with a 190-foot, 96-foot ship, and 90-foot waves. It's just like a roller coaster almost.
Were there times you thought you'd be covered up or capsized? I mean, was it? I know it was a great boat.
It was built for that kind of abuse. We were watertight, top and bottom.
Right.
And I knew we'd float, but it was really rough.
But there were times you had to hang on.
Right.
Yeah.
My problem is that I got hungry and nobody else did.
Because you weren't getting seasick.
No, I wasn't getting seasick. I finally got the cook out of bed, and he came up to the galley, and he got a can of tomatoes and some saltine crackers and threw them at me. He says, "You can have that. I ain't coming back." And that's what I had to eat for about 5 or 6 days.
Now, you told me one time about that the Bramble went the wrong side of a buoy and hit a boulder.
Yeah,
cut a hole in it. You had just gotten off duty, and this was during the cold time, right?
During the winter time. We had gone back to Ketchikan to get supplies and going north in probably an area that the ships don't go now because it was smaller. It's like going between a mountain and on waterways. Well, again, this lieutenant read the buoy wrong and went the wrong way and hit a giant boulder. Then we knocked a hole about big enough to drive a car through in our main freight area. The captain, had just gone to bed. I'd been on duty all night in the engine room, and so abandoned ship came on, and I ran up on deck and came out the hatch on the deck, and my feet just froze to the deck because it was probably 30 or 40 degrees below zero.
Right.
And the old captain.
You were barefooted?
Barefooted.
Yeah, because you just got off duty.
I just had skivvies on.
Yeah, that's right. You were in for the night.
I didn't know what was going on. Something was going on. I felt the big hit. Well, captain happened to be on the bridge way up above me, and he saw me and he says, "Smitty, stand there, don't move." And he threw me down his heavy Parker. And he said, "Put that on and don't move until you feel your feet give way, and then jump over on the piling, and we'll get you then." And lucky, they were able to fix the hatches that have to hold back the water with some extra board for it didn't break through into other parts of the ship.
Right.
And we went back to in Canada to a dry dock there to get that.
Because if you had tried to break loose in that situation, you might have ripped your feet off.
Pulled all
right?
the skin off.
All the skin, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
good
fortunate. Advice.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, because I could see a panic sort of coming in when you're like that.
Yeah.
The base in Seward, Alaska. That's in the Western Gulf, and you were the only military there, right?
Yeah, they had thought Japan was going to try to come overland, and they did. But at the time we got to Alaska, they were still fighting out on the Aleutians, driving them out.
Right.
Which we lost thousands of people young men out there.
Yeah.
Because the Japanese weren't prepared for winter, and our guys weren't either, and they were fighting in that kind of weather. Finally, the Japanese just left, and we moved right behind them so we could build Loran Stations.
Right. Let's go to some pictures that you have supplied, and some other pictures that we got off of the United States Coast Guard website.
Yeah.
And let's go to some pictures. And there's a young one.
Boy.
Yeah. How old were you? You were a teenager, right?
I had turned 18 just before I went in the service.
Right.
So that was my first leave in San Francisco. Went into the studio so I could get my mama a picture.
That's good. That's good. You talked about the fishing. Yeah. This is a halibut?
Yeah, halibut. We didn't have one supplying us, so and the captain was not really a GI, so we learned to hunt and fish.
Right.
We caught halibut, salmon. We made our own fishing gear out of welding rods. We could throw them across streams and pull in, catch 3-foot salmon.
And that's a relatively small one, right?
That one, I had some that'd be almost as tall as me, and we caught these right off the ship while we were docked there in Seward.
And that's you, the proud fisherman, there behind it, holding.
One day we caught they called it an electronic eel or something like that. It was about 12 feet long. I caught it and got it up on the deck.
Right.
And all of a sudden that thing took out after us like a snake.
Right.
Luckily the captain happened to see us, and he's the only one that had a pistol, and he took care of us for it. But it had fangs like everything. But we got to hunt and fish. We didn't have a vehicle except there was one little bar in town, and he had a Jeep that let us borrow it.
Right.
Sometimes because we were the only people.
There's
the only customers, yeah.
There's a picture that you have in your album of the Bramble. We've got a little bit more modern pictures of the same boat.
Yeah. It was heavily built. It had a double keel in the front so you could run up on ice and crush the ice.
Right.
The way an icebreaker works.
Exactly.
And so you had a double keel to run up on.
Right.
Our fastest speed was about 12 miles an hour. So we went a lot of places at 12 miles an hour.
Here you are hard at work. Is that you in the middle?
Oh, yeah. That's in
Waikiki.
Waikiki Beach, right in front of the old pink hotel there.
Right.
Back there. Just before we took off for Alaska, we stopped there. Well, we made one run out of there south to the equator.
That's probably the warmest you were for the next several years right there. Huh?
This one run we made right quick. It was our whole ship was loaded with beer for those working on to shoot the atomic bomb off down there at that island down there.
You were a popular ship.
Yeah, they were glad to see us.
Yeah. And there's two pictures side by side.
Yeah.
The bow.
Yeah, the front there.
The waves
and at times that whole front would just go underneath the wave.
Right.
We'd just float like a cork, come up, and then we'd go like a roller coaster down the next wave.
Boy, good thing you didn't get seasick. It would have been a rough tour of duty.
Everyone, some way, got up to take their duty because we had to keep going.
Right, right.
To supply these people, and it was like that all winter months. And the winter months are about 9 months long up there.
Right. Yes. Yes.
I told you the little lady that had a garden right next to where we usually docked.
Right.
I saw her planting potatoes, Irish potatoes, where you cut up a potato and plant it. And we were gone about 6 weeks and came back. And she was harvesting potatoes, and I got to talk to her because she helped us in the USO that we established there. They were about almost some of them a foot around in 6 weeks' time. And I asked her about make a lot of good fried potatoes. She said, no, you can't fry them. They're so full of water. We just have to bake them and mash them and do them that way. But their summer's just so short, everything grows fast.
Exactly. This was, you're there in the front.
That was our leisure time.
That was your leisure time.
Since we were at sea, that was our night life or day life.
Right.
That's when we were off duty.
Right. Okay.
But we'd be seeing sharks, all kinds of things.
Yeah, whales.
And all kinds of whales up there.
I got to go up to Alaska on a cruise a couple of years ago, so I got a little taste of what you got to see all the time. Now, this is one of the photos that I got off of the Coast Guard website. This is the Bramble right there, and you can see its ability to cut right through the ice. Now, those are just little ice cubes compared to some of the stuff that you cut through.
Oh, yeah,
right?
It was solid.
That's easy stuff right
We could go through solid. If it was 3 foot thick, we could break through it. And had such a giant, large, looked like it was all brass propeller in the back, probably about, I don't know, 12 foot in diameter.
Right.
And it would just chew up the ice behind us then. So we left a navigable trail when we went through there. It was like a blender.
Right.
In the way it worked.
There's another photograph of it.
That's probably when it was reconditioned some. They took some of the high towers there at the head off of it.
Right.
Slowed us down, I'm sure. But
quite a vessel.
It was so heavily built, heavier steel than most ships because it had to withstand all that ice pressure.
Right.
There.
Right.
But.
And this was, you said that you're in this picture, you're in the top row of the far right.
Top right. We were celebrating Victory over Europe Day.
Right.
We'd gotten word, finally, we didn't have radios to listen to or even newspapers to get. And finally, the captain some way found out, or they told us when we came into the dock in Seward, about we'd had victory in Europe, and that's our crew. We all were celebrating
that. Got a couple of pictures here. This is an example of one of the Loran Stations. You may or may not have worked on this station. You worked on
sure. That looks like one of the, going out the Aleutian chain. There were a lot of volcanoes working off. As I told you, one day we went through a volcano that was really going off, and so much ash.
Right.
We thought it stopped up our engines, but when I got down into the bottom of the bilge of the ship to undo our filters, opened it up, and it was packed full of sardines. We'd run through a school of sardines, and it sucked them in, and it absolutely stopped the ship.
Wow.
We couldn't cool the engines down anymore.
Right.
So we had a ship bottom full of sardines to clean up after that.
There's the same station. This particular one is at an island called Uta, UTTA, part of the Aleutians.
That looks like them. You don't have palm trees there.
Exactly.
At all.
It's
frozen most of the time.
That's true. So that's just an example of these Loran stations that you supplied the Seabees as they built them. About the time that you got the last one built, and things were headed for Japan for what was anticipated a ground war. That's when the bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
Yeah, we had left Alaska and were going back to Honolulu for whatever.
Right.
To catch up with them, probably.
Right.
The war had gotten stopped because the bomb had been dropped. By the time that we went from the Aleutians down to Honolulu.
Right.
And so I'd been in there long enough that I was ready to go home to Mama pretty quick.
Right.
And I got mustered out pretty soon. My ship went on. That time I knew it was going on to Singapore to reset all the buoys because we had a big boom that could lift 100,000 pounds.
Right. And
pull these deep sea buoys off the bottom of the ocean because they had grown with all the growth and, to where you almost sunk the ship. We did some going up the coast in the United States, and that was my job to run that thing, and we'd turn that ship almost to where the kennel was down to the water before it break loose, and it was just like a big top when it did break loose.
Right.
Because it was stuck to the bottom with all this growth from that, and they went went on, but I decided I was ready to go home to Mama. They did offer me to send me back to Coast Guard Academy for a full career.
Right.
But I hadn't seen Mama in 4 years. I was ready to go.
So in 1945, you did go back home to Wichita
Yeah,
Falls,
right.
and you wanted to go to school to study landscape architecture. A&M didn't have such a program at the time, right?
They didn't have professors at that time.
Right. So you went to University of Oklahoma
My
for
best
a small
friend,
time.
I thought he was my best friend, was going to University of Oklahoma. So
Right.
I went with him up there and happened to meet an Aggie up there that was going to be head of the department that the University of Oklahoma was going to. And he taught me into just going ahead and enrolling, which I did.
Right.
But about the middle of the year, they decided not to. So I packed up and headed for A&M.
Headed for A&M.
Yeah.
And you came down, and of course, having already served, you had the option of whether to be in the Corps or not. And but you decided to enter the Corps, and you got a regular Army commission, and
Yeah,
were a captain in the reserve, right?
Since it was midterm, well, they housed us in the Corps dorms because that's all the room they had. And since I'd been in the Corps, they offered me that, and I could get a regular Army commission too, which gave a little extra money besides the GI
Right.
thing there. So I had more money in my pocket than I've ever had in my life, which is probably $10 or $15 a month.
Right.
But I enjoyed the Corps and ended up commanding officer of our unit
Right.
on the senior year. So
Right.
they accepted, the young guys accepted the veterans fine.
Right.
And since we've been in leadership for more than what most of them had, but we seemed to filter up
Right.
into that. So I enjoyed that very much.
We're just about out of time, but after you graduated from Texas A&M, you went into your dad's business, into the family landscape business, and kept that going. As a matter of fact, Hill Country Landscapes in Austin, you owned and operated that, and your son still does.
Yeah.
Right.
I got out of town so he could run the business. I found out that's what dads have to do sometimes.
They got
So I'm having fun at A&M again.
Exactly, you are. Yeah. And you also worked for the highway department. You had a lot to do with, when we go down the highway and we see these roadside parks with the teepees and things like that, you had a lot to do with constructing and making
when we
those.
built the interstates, I was landscape architect with the highway department, designed the roadside parks and
Right.
so on. Before that, I was landscape architect for the city of Austin. I did work along Town Lake and built a botanical garden at Zilker Park and
Right.
things that are still going.
Right. It was a wonderful career, and you married Martha in 1951?
Yeah, changed my life.
Yeah, indeed. Well, congratulations on that, and thank you for your service. It's remarkable. I think you might be the first Coast Guard veteran that we've had on the show. It's a remarkable story.
There wasn't many, and I didn't know what to expect. But in those days, we didn't question what we were going to do. We just did it.
We're out of time. Thank you for your service.
Okay.
Martha and C.O. Smith have been married more than 58 years now, and his is a fascinating story of his Coast Guard service near war's end. Coast Guardsmen served in every theater of operation in World War II. Many don't know that it was the Coast Guard that captured the first German prisoner of the war. We salute C.O. Smith for his service, as we do all veterans. I'm Tom Turbeville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.